church, we see them there. They're on the left, your left, when you come up to the icon. You see three little figures there, three men on horses. If you look carefully, you'll see that the three wise men, the three kings, three magi, that the horses are different colors. You'll see that their ages are different. One has no beard, the other is a middle-aged man, and the other is an older man. The difference there, and what it represents, the symbolism in the icon, is that they represent the Gentiles, the people from afar, not the Hebrew people, the people who come from afar, the people from the north and the east and the south that come to meet the newborn king. But they represent all the nations. And so their horses are different, their ages are different, because these three figures represent the rest of the world, the non-Hebrew world coming to accept Jesus Christ as the King and God. In the icon, you can see it clearer here, the star came and stood over where the young child was. You see the star at the top of the icon. But notice the star is what we call a mandala, this image that has the blue and the rays that come from it. When we see that image, like in the image of the Transfiguration or in other icons, it means that what is represented mystically and spiritually. The fathers of the church, St. John Chrysostom and the other church fathers, they teach this. That the Star of Bethlehem was not a physical star. It wasn't up in the sky. You couldn't see it. Herod couldn't see it. Other people couldn't see it. That it was a spiritual star, a noetic star, a mystical star that guided the minds and the hearts of the Magi. And they followed this mystical star in their mind, and it gave them the route and the path to go to Bethlehem. And yet, the star, it disappeared suddenly, and they were stuck already in that part of the world, and so they went to Herod, and they said, "We followed him from the east with the star. But now the star has disappeared, and we don't know where to go. Perhaps you can give us some help, some information." Then we know the story. Herod talked with the scribes and says, yes, that a king is to be born in Bethlehem of Judea. And so they go, and they start to Bethlehem again, and then the star, the spiritual star, appears in their minds, in their hearts. And they come and they find the child. Now in the gospel it's quite clear that when they come and they find the child, it says they entered into the house, ikos. They entered into the house where the child was, and they gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. In the icon, we see that the wise men are coming to the cave. They never come to the cave. It took them almost a year and a half, up to 2 years, to travel after Christ was born, to come where the Christ child was. And in other icons, we see that Christ is sitting as a toddler on the lap of his mother in the house. And the wise men enter the house, not the cave, and they offer him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We see that in the gospel, King Herod gives orders that all the babies in Bethlehem and the surrounding neighborhoods that are how old? 2 years old or under are to be killed. So we see that there's a time gap. And we might ask, well, why is the Magi in the icon of the Nativity then, if they're not coming to the cave? You see movies. They have movies about the birth of Christ, and you see the shepherds there, and then you see the three kings there offering their gifts. Well, historically, it's not what took place, but it's condensed, as it were, into that. The three kings are in the icon of the Nativity because it was the event of Christ being born that initiated their journey to come where the Christ child was. Now, the three Magi, again, they represent different nations. They represent all the different peoples of the non-Hebrew world, the pagans, the Gentiles that are coming to Christ. That these were three wise men, as it says. They're not fools. They weren't people who worship the stars. In the Troparvi said, those who worship the stars were taught by a star to adore thee, the Son of Righteousness. But the three kings, they were not worshippers of the star. It says that those who were worshippers of the star, it means the pagans in general, that they worship the stars, that they determined that life was determined by the movement of the stars and their location in the heavenly ground. And now Christ was coming as the true light, the true star of righteousness, the Son of Righteousness, who would make known to them the truthfulness of things. These wise men were not astrologers. These wise men were astronomers, as it were, that they used the science of their day and their age. In other words, they sought the truthfulness of the Word. They sought what was true. Like the Greek philosophers, that Plato and Socrates and the others, that in their philosophical writings, that God enlightened them with a certain wisdom to anticipate the coming of Christ into the world, that these three wise men, they also were being used in divine providence to bring pagans into the knowledge of truth, and that Christ is the light of the world and he is the Son of righteousness. Now when they did come to the house, what did they offer? Well, we know that. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold because Jesus is the king. Gold befits the king. Frankincense, which is incense, the finest incense as it were, that this was offered to the gods. The pagans offered incense to the gods. And Jesus Christ is the God, and so they offered incense to God. And myrrh, they offered myrrh because myrrh is one of the most fragrant of the spices, and it gives adornment and grace and beauty and spiritual fragrance to whatever it touches. In the scriptures we see, in the prayer that the priest reads, when he puts on this robe at every service, there's a prayer the priest says, blessed is God who pours out his grace upon his priest as myrrh upon the beard of Aaron. The beard of Aaron that runs down his robe, the fringement of his garment, so that his garment is covered with myrrh. That there's a spiritual fragrance, a beautiful spiritual fragrance, which is myrrh. We know that in the lives of the saints. Saint Simeon, the father of Saint Salva of Serbia, was a myrrh gusher. Saint Nicholas, myrrh came forth from his body. So myrrh is this spiritual, beautiful oil that is fragrant and beautiful and graceful, and it enlightens and gives beauty. So this is what the three kings offered, because Jesus was king, Jesus was God, and Jesus was the fragrant one. It was also prophetic, because when our Lord died, he was anointed with myrrh. He was embalmed with the holy myrrh. The sweet spices that the myrrh-bearing woman brought among those spices was spikenard, and it was myrrh that he was anointed with. So these were the three gifts. But the three gifts that the three kings offered, the wise ones, that the fathers, in their interpretations for us, they say that we too should offer the three gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh to our Savior. Well, do we have gold? Do we have frankincense? Do we have myrrh? Well, we do. In the minds of the church fathers, yes, we have gold, we have frankincense, and we have myrrh. And we should offer them to the newborn King, to Christ. But the gold, frankincense, and myrrh, it's not something material. It's part of who we are. It's part of who we are spiritually. Well, what is the gold? Well, the gold is, as the King Solomon says, that the pleasing treasure that is in the mouth is wisdom. And the wisdom of the wise man is like unto gold. And the interpretation of the church fathers is this, that our mouth, that what we speak about, what we talk about, what we converse about, what's important to us, that it should be filled with heavenly wisdom. The teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ, that these are the things we share with our lips, our tongue, and our mouth. That this is as it were precious gold, that our mouth is filled with gold, with heavenly wisdom, with heavenly theology, that this is called for us to offer that gift in praise to the Lord, in doxology to the Lord, for the sanctification of our own life and for the benefit of others, that our mouth is golden. St. John Chrysostom means the golden lipped one. St. John Chrysostom, that there was gold, his lips were gold. And our lips should be gold, our tongue should be gold, our mouth should be gold. But how is it gold? It's with wisdom, but heavenly wisdom, divine wisdom. We offer incense. How do we offer incense? Well, we offer ourselves in prayer as incense. Let my prayer arise in thy sight, O Lord, as incense. What is the incense? Well, the incense is the fragrance, the sweet fragrance of our prayer from the altar of our heart. that is enkindled first in our mind. Incense needs a fire. Incense is no good unless there's fire. Something has to be on it. It has to go on the coal. It has to be inflamed. And how is prayer inflamed in our mind? It's inflamed with what we call zeal. When you think of zeal, it means something that's hot. If somebody's zealous for something, they're hot for something. Fiery, hot, zealous. And so prayer is first enkindled in our mind. To be full of zeal, for the zeal for prayer. And then with the love from the heart, we offer our prayers as a pleasing fragrance. And we ask that our prayer ascend as a sweet fragrance before the Lord, that He accept our prayer. And myrrh, how do we offer myrrh? Well, we offer myrrh because it's the sweet flowing oil. And what is the sweet flowing oil that we are clothed in, that we're anointed with? Well, it's an anointing of the chrism of Christ. But it's much more than that. That it's our own virtues. It's the virtue that adorns our soul. It's the adornment of our soul. It's a spiritual oil fragrance, the beautiful fragrance that emits from a soul that is virtuous and God-centered. That this is what is offered to the Lord. And this oil, it covers the vesture of our soul, as it covered the beard of Aaron and the vesture of his garment. And also, think of the myrrh in the case of our Lord, as it was prophetic, that it was given to him as a child. And remember that in the icon you see very clearly here that Christ is born in a manger, but look at it. It's not a manger. That it's the tomb. It's a stone. That Christ is not born in the manger made of wood where the animals feed. There's no straw there. But he's wrapped in swaddling clothes, which is a prefigurement of his death and being placed in the tomb. The swaddling clothes is the swaddling clothes that Christ has when he dies. And so it's very prophetic that in the midst of the cave, it's the image of Christ, the God-man who comes, and the only one who was born to die. His vocation was to die. And so it's that image that is given there. And so the myrrh is given for the embalming. And how is it for our embalming? Well, it's to embalm ourselves so that we're dead to sin, dead to the old man, that we don't have that spiritual decomposition take place. Myrrh was there to preserve the body from being decayed, as it were. So there was kind of preserved in the swaddling clothes. And the swaddling clothes that protects us is the grace of God. And the myrrh that is anointed with is the anointing of our own virtues, but it's also the oil of dispassion. Dispassion. Apostle Paul says, mortify the flesh and its passions. And what myrrh does, it prevents the decomposition. And so the new man we don't want to decompose. But the old man we want to decompose. And the embalmment of the old man that was dead, he's over and done with. And that we have newness. And so finally, what does it all mean? It means that we ourselves are offering ourselves as the gift. As the Magi offered the three gifts, we offer the three gifts of what? The gifts of holy wisdom, which is gold. The gift of prayer, which is frankincense. And the gift of virtuous living, which is the holy myrrh. It's an offering of ourselves to the Lord. So let us offer ourselves to the Lord as gold, frankincense, as myrrh, as the three wise men did so many centuries ago. Amen.